I'm not a legal reporter, I'm not a crime reporter, I'm a business reporter. And when a business is doing things for years that just don't make sense, it just makes me keep wondering, what's going on? What am I missing? Okay.
ბათუმში ტრამპ ტაუერის მშენებლობის დაწყების შესახებ ოფიციალური ხელშეკრულება უკვე გაფორმდა. შეთანხმებას ხელი დონალდ ტრამპმა და Silk Road ჯგუფის ხელმძღვანელებს.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. President.
How would you describe the theory of the case?
I think the theory of the case is pretty simple. This is right after the financial crisis. There's not a lot of real estate deals to be had. It was this paradoxical period in Trump's life. Because of The Apprentice, because of his TV stardom, he had never been more famous. He had never been more thought of as the model of a successful businessman, of a successful developer, and his business was in a lot of trouble. You know, there were multiple bankruptcies, he was losing control of the casinos. There was a real need for cash. The Trump Organization really is no longer a developer in the traditional sense. It's not building buildings, it's not buying land and then constructing a tower. It's really becoming a marketing company. It has this brand, Trump, and it goes around the world and around the country and sells that brand. There's a few reasons why these Georgians were interested in the Trump brand. So part of it, I think, as people have told me, is it really clicks with what wealthy Russian men or former Soviet Union men think of as manliness.
He may be the most eligible bachelor in America. Please welcome Donald Trump.
They love the gold, they love the marble, the flash, you know, the old guy with flashy clothes and a young, beautiful wife. And there's a real brand synergy there that maybe there isn't in other parts of the world. Remember, the Trump Organization is switching to an international posture with like 4 or 5 people doing these international deals with very little experience overseas. And they're going into very complicated countries with deeply corrupt economies and really problematic interactions between business and politics. And eventually what happens, though, is you are in bed with some really bad people.
This happened in 2011, 2012. Why should we care about it today? And does any of this have to do with what we care most about, Russia, Russian collusion?
Yeah, so the reason that I started getting passionate about this story was when Donald Trump, in an interview with the New York Times, basically hinted that if Robert Mueller, the special counsel, begins investigating his business deals, he would consider that crossing a red line, and hinted that he might fire him. Now, I already knew a fair bit about how the Trump Organization worked, and I had the strong suspicion that if there was any kind of collusion, we don't know if there was, it probably had its roots in a business deal. So I thought to look more carefully at deals in the former Soviet Union. And what I saw here is the connection to Putin is just a few hops, you know, the shin bone's connected to the ankle bone. I could not have done it without these two Columbia University. They were journalism students and now they're investigative fellows. They spent unbelievable amount of time on the Georgian government's business registries. But then they find out that most of the companies involved are actually registered in these offshore jurisdictions, Malta or the Netherlands or the British Virgin Islands. And so that's a process of trying to find those companies. Ultimately, billions and billions and billions of dollars, countries all over the world. We really needed to choose, okay, no, what really matters is the people who are doing business with Trump, who were they, where did they get their money, how did they get their money, and how are they connected to Putin? That's what matters. 99 out of 100 people won't talk to you, but once in a while, and it only takes a few, you find people who will tell you some real information. Probably the weirdest moment was I was meeting a source who asked to meet on the waterfront, insisted that I leave my phone in the car. This person turned off both of their phones. It had that kind of cloak and dagger feeling throughout. I'd say the toughest thing about reporting on Trump now is everybody is terrified of being mentioned in a tweet, being attacked in some way. Now, nobody's threatened me. Nobody has said they want to hurt me, but it is a scary time to be somebody who's reporting negative stories about the president. And I do live in some degree of fear. I mean, I was a reporter in Iraq, and I had other fears in Iraq, but I've never had that kind of personal, someone could just decide that I'm somehow the personification of the enemy and ruin, cause real damage. And that's scary.
Do you believe that the Trump organization was involved in money laundering?
There's almost no question that some of their business, some of the money they made came from money launderers. Trump's not alone. I do think he's probably an outlier. I think he takes on riskier deals with more troubling people than most would. But he's not alone. But now he's president. And when you have this kind of promiscuous approach, this broad approach to being available financially to some of the most problematic people in the world, people who are from a part of the world where there is no separation between politics, intelligence, military, and business. They're all one intertwined elite. You have a disaster. You have a president who could, it's reasonable to fear, be seriously compromised. Doing a story like this, I'm like, boy, we have barely scratched the surface. All right, thanks guys. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Adam.